join me in Gasho as I read the words of Shinran Shonin from the Shokshinde. The light of compassion that grasps us, illumines and protects us always. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. This is kind of low here. Okay. Can I? Sorry about that. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, it seems to me that so many times when I'm preparing the Dharma message, I have a topic that I'm working on, such as for today, I was working on a message about celebrating the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026, appropriate for this service. But it seems to me that so many times something happens that seems so big that I feel I can't be all lighthearted and give a New Year's talk as if nothing happened, as if we aren't all feeling sorrow and pain and maybe even the exhaustion of everything that's happened just this week, from the mass killings at Bondi Beach in Australia and the shootings at Brown University, horrible deaths of Rob and Michelle Reiner, all of which happened earlier in the week. And just when I talk to people, it seems there's a lot of sorrow and difficulty and illness. And then earlier, when I was typing out my New Year's Dharma message, I was sitting on my couch. I was all relaxed. I had the fire going in the fireplace, and I was sipping my tea. I was so cozy and content in my safe and warm home, while at the same time, people were hiding out in their homes or out in the cold up on rooftops, afraid to take public transportation, to send their children to school, or they're going hungry because they're afraid to go out to the local food shelves, all because the ICE agents are roaming the Twin Cities and snatching people up and shipping them away. And just this week, 4 people died in their custody. So, you know, I know that after the Holocaust, we said something like that would never happen again. But we had our own version already had taken place when we confined Native Americans. And we all know of our sad and terrible history of putting innocent people into the internment camps. After that, we thought, never again. But here we are, right in our country, yet again, in our state and in our own city. And I feel so helpless and so sad and upset at the cruelty right now and the racism and all the hatred. When the pandemic hit in March of 2020 and the world shut down, because I sew, a lot of my friends and relatives contacted me and they asked me if I would please make them some masks. Before masks, anyone could even get masks. And so I did. I sewed a lot of them and in those early days. And luckily, for some reason, I had a lot of manila envelopes in my house and a ton of stamps. And so I slapped a bunch of stamps on each envelope and then I inserted the masks. And with each one, I placed a quote by an author, Arundhati Roy. It said, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." It seemed hopeful in the midst of a time when life as we knew it had suddenly changed and we were all trying to just cope, to adjust, to survive. And we needed some kind of hope. And hope did win out, right? Because here we are now all together in one room. I know COVID is still present, it's true, but it doesn't necessarily mean a death sentence as it did back then. And we've been able to return to being out and about in the world without the fear we held back then. And that quote is helpful. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. But although the need to form a bubble or to mask up or to stay inside our homes, although that is over, we're still waiting, aren't we, for that kind of world. And there does, as I said, seem to be so much suffering and stress, there's so much anger and hatred and cruelty and fear in our society these days, so much that, as I started to say before, it seems that each time I begin to write a Dharma message, I feel I need to adjust it because something awful and shocking and disturbing has happened, and then I feel so torn. Should my talk be a respite from it all? Or should I address the heaviness and the overwhelm that I think maybe a lot of us are carrying? And so I decided I just can't really put it aside or ignore it, because that is the truth of today. But perhaps we can come to understand how we as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists can hold it all, how we can live in the midst of it all. And I hope I don't sound like a broken record when I discuss this, but here I go. I want to talk about the compassion of the Amida Buddha, because it really and truly is what gives me hope and what makes sense to me as a convert to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. It's this compassion that I think is radical. And that's what I found when I found Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. It made me feel as if I had come home, because Shin Buddhism felt like something so true, something that I already knew deep inside, all the way back to my childhood, but I didn't know what it was called. In Buddhism, we understand that individually and collectively, we are ignorant and foolish beings who flail and struggle and fall short in our thoughts and in our behaviors. And Shinran recognized this. He called himself Bonbu, or foolish one, because we can be so blind in our grasping and our own wanting and needing. And although knowing that truth doesn't always feel so good, it may make us feel discouraged at times, there's just so much peace and comfort and hope we can find in understanding this about ourselves and also about all of humanity. For isn't it true that all the upsetting things that are happening today can be linked to grasping and wanting and needing, can be linked to being stuck in self-centeredness and greed? It's through Buddhism that our ignorance is revealed, our ignorance of our very own human nature, our ignorance of how our own ego, our own wants, our own desires, our own grasping gets in the way, in our own way, and creates our own suffering. But we don't have to feel shame or despair about ourselves or even about the state of the world right now, because it is through the compassion of the Amida Buddha that comfort and hope arrives. We find guidance and a path through it all. In recognizing that our own passions that get in the way, we can come to accept this truth and perhaps feel a deeper compassion for our fellow human beings who stumble and bumble and may not even understand this reality. We can feel compassion for others because we are all the same. As Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, we can acknowledge it so as what it is to be human, and then in that recognition, we can accept the embrace of the great compassion of the Amida Buddha. Because the Dharmakara, who became the Amida Buddha, understood our inability to transform through our own ego-filled efforts, and thus showed and shows the greatest compassion of all through the primal vow, the vow to save all sentient beings. When Shinran embraced the Amida's primal vow and undertook the practice of the Nembutsu, he began living within that great compassion. And when we do the same, when we realize that the compassion of the Amida Buddha shines upon each one of us without ceasing, just as Shinran Shonin says, we too live with the great compassion and need not be discouraged in anything. Allowing the compassionate heart of Amida Buddha to embrace us, that is, when we encounter the overwhelming truth of the primal vow, our life is changed. And we know that it is the Amida Buddha that shines the light to bring us to a deeper realization of who we are and how we live. And then we now have a much clearer understanding of what our world is. And because of our understanding, we can live more mindfully, more responsibly, more gratefully, and more compassionately. For those of you who have heard me give previous talks, you might perhaps recall that I'm always so delighted when I find Jodo Shinshu Buddhist concepts in the most unexpected ways, ranging from an email I received from 1-800-Flowers one time, or an article in the business section of the Minneapolis Tribune. So today, when I was writing this week, I ran across a quote on a Penzeys Spices gift card. It said, "Kindness can't sit down simply because anger has stood up." Kindness, goodness, a compassionate heart should never sit down, should never take a back seat. Compassion speaks louder than hatred and cruelty. It is not cowed or even overshadowed by anything that is going on today or ever. Therefore, compassion does change the world. We do not have to lose heart or feel futile or helpless because, yes, another world is on her way. And on a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. It breathes when we embrace the compassion as expressed in the primal vow with deep gratitude. It breathes when we realize the depth of our compassion, of that compassion, and respond with our own deep compassion. It breathes when we treat someone with compassion and they turn around and are kind to the next person. And all of this actually turns out to be a good introduction to today, which is what I started out to write about, our Joya A service, or Joya A service, I hope I'm saying it right, our year-end service, and what it all means and why we ring the bell 108 times. Normally, Joya A is celebrated on December 31, on New Year's Eve, but this service here today is our last one of 2025, so we are being creative and celebrating it today. And anyway, today is the winter solstice, and that is the darkest day of the year that gives way to the beginning of more light. Very symbolic. And in fact, the timing of this is perfect for our service because at 9:03 a.m., just a few minutes ago, or about an hour ago, I'd say, was the exact time that the North Pole was still to the farthest away from the sun. So at this very moment, we are moving into longer days. So it's a perfect day to say goodbye to the old and step into the new. It's a perfect day to reflect on the darkness of our very human passion and defilements, and also to embrace the light of gratitude and compassion that will shine more and more each day. On Joya A, we express our gratitude for the Dharma and for our Sangha. We consider all the various conditions that have come together to bring us through this year. And also, as one year slides into another, we reflect upon impermanence. We bid 2025 farewell, and we prepare for the beginning of the new year. We acknowledge that we don't know how the next year will turn out, but we step into it with peace and confidence, knowing that we have the Nembutsu, and that is all we need to rely upon. And so, as Shin Buddhists, we celebrate and honor all of that by ringing the Joya E no Kane, or the bell of the last night, the big temple bell, 108 times. The number 108 symbolizes the ringing away of the 108 passions or desires that inflict us as humans, the 108 passions that keep us in a world of delusion, entanglements, and self-centeredness. These 108 passions include our feelings of greed, of pride, of egoism, and more. And of course, as we ring the bell and bid the year farewell, as we welcome the new year, we contemplate the compassion of the Amida Buddha with deep gratitude. The Amida Buddha who embraces each and every one of us humans, with all of our 108 passions. The Amida Buddha who brings us into the Pure Land. So I ask you now to join me again in Gassho as I reread the words of Shinran Shonin. The light of compassion that grasps us, illumines, and protects us always. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. So Happy New Year, everyone. And excuse me because I need to wear glasses to read close up, and I don't need them far away, but this was in the middle. So Happy New Year, everyone. And excuse me because I need to wear glasses to read close up, and I don't need them far away, but this was in the middle.